Mr. President, in his State of the Union speech last week, President Obama promised America a year of action. He says he wants to use his pen and his phone to make it happen. Well, here's what I say. Use that pen and that phone of yours today for the Keystone XL Pipeline, the jobs that will be created almost immediately. Here's something both parties can agree on. I see my colleague from North Dakota here. Nobody's been more aggressively advocating the Keystone Pipeline than he has. This is an important, shovel-ready project for America. Here's the President's chance to work with Republicans on a bipartisan plan to create thousands, literally thousands, of private sector jobs almost immediately. Here's your chance to show you're not captive to the ideological extremists on the left. Here's your chance for action on a policy the American people actually want. Here's your chance, Mr. President. On Friday, the State Department released yet another report concluding what the President and everyone else already knew. The Keystone XL would meet the President's stated requirements on the environment, that there was basically no good reason not to build it. So here's a project that essentially wouldn't cost the taxpayers a dime to build, that would have almost no net environmental effect, and that would put thousands of Americans to work right away. It's an initiative that's supported by an overwhelming majority of Americans, that's supported by unions, by businesses, by Republicans, by independents, and even by prominent Democrats, close to 20 right here in the Senate alone. And yet the President has delayed and delayed for more than 5 years. 5 years now, not because the project really needs to be studied further, but because of pressure from the most doctrinaire fringe of the doctrinaire left. These are the kind of folks who care a lot more about ideology than what makes sense for the middle class. And yet these are the same folks who have a lot of influence in today's Democratic Party. Just look at the war on coal, a war that's being waged with scant concern for the lives of people who live in the states like Kentucky. People are really, really hurting, and it doesn't seem to matter much to these folks. So here's the thing. The President's run out of excuses on Keystone. It's way past time to make a decision. And let's be honest, this decision shouldn't be a hard one at all, because the science, the economics, and common sense all basically point in one direction. And as far as I can tell, ideology is really the only thing that could lead to a different decision here. So is President Obama on the side of the middle class, or is he on the side of left-wing special interests? He needs to use that pen to show us where he stands, and he really ought to do it today. And while he's at it, he should pick up the phone, too, because in his State of the Union address, the President called for Congress to help break down trade barriers that stand in the way of more American jobs. He called for legislation that would help prevent foreign countries from taking the trade jobs that should be going to America's middle class. China and Europe aren't standing on the sidelines, he said, and neither should we, he said. Republicans applauded him for that. He's absolutely right. But now the President's own party is standing in the way of getting anything done. So if there ever was a moment for the President to use his phone, this is it. Because trade should be a bipartisan issue. It sure used to be. Just ask President Clinton. So, Mr. President, America's middle class is hurting. The very least Washington can do for them is to approve job-creating initiatives like Keystone and enhancing American exports. So we'll see soon enough if the President meant what he said about his pen and his phone. If his year of action will really be just that, instead of another tired slogan. The answer here is pretty simple. The President needs to step up and lead. Middle-class Americans have taken a backseat to the hard left extremists in this town for entirely too long. It's time for the President to stand up to these folks and do the right thing, Pick up that phone and that pen, and let's get this done. Mr. President, I yield the floor.